Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen and Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do another recipe out of this cookbook, the Chicago Daily News Cookbook. This was published in 1930 and it's a great cookbook in that it's basically a community cookbook. People have sent their recipes in to let other people know what they're eating, and the editors have gone through and curated these recipes in a way that it conforms to a fairly strict budget of $4 per person per week for food cost. And the recipe book shows a lot of menus and shows you how you can start with one thing on Sunday, use leftovers for lunch on Monday, what you cook for dinner on Monday, and some of the other leftovers can be used again on Tuesday, and how to sort of pay it forward each day so that you get the most you possibly can out of your food budget. And it's also broken down into seasons based on what would be available in season so you would get the best bang for your food dollar. It's quite an interesting cookbook. So today we're going to do something called lima beans and beef. It is on a page with 3 recipes called leftover meat, which are all very interesting. But lima beans and beef sort of fits with what I have today to cook in my kitchen. First off, it calls for lima beans. But of course, I don't have any lima beans, and I'm not going to the grocery store right now to get some. So I had the end of a bag of lima beans and the end of a bag of Great Northern beans and the end of a bag of some other bean that had, the label had been cut off. I'm not really sure what kind of beans they were. So it took 3 ends of bags to come up with the right amount of beans. So they were in this pot overnight with water. To that, I'm going to add chopped up onion. And the instructions are to let them cook until the beans are cooked and the water is mostly absorbed. So on goes a lid and we'll let that go. Okay, I'm going to say the beans are done. So I'm going to turn those off. I'm going to turn this cast iron pan on. And we need to brown off this beef. Now, the last trip to the grocery store, pretty much all I could find was this cross rib simmering steak, which is a fairly tough piece of meat. So I've cut it up into small little cubes, and we're going to put it in here. We're going to braise it. That'll take away most of the toughness. But it says first to brown it in drippings, which leaves it open to interpretation, whatever drippings you have on your counter. So I have a choice between bacon fat drippings that I keep out on the counter, or some pork lard that I rendered that also is counter stable. It can just sit over there, doesn't have to be refrigerated, everything's fine. I think I'm going to use the bacon drippings. I don't know why. So, a couple tablespoons in the bottom of the pot. Now, as that melts, comes up to temperature, in goes the beef. Now, we aren't looking to cook this all the way through because it's going to go in the oven next. So we're just looking to have a little bit of brown on the outside and build up some flavor in the bottom of the pan. Looks good. Now, the only seasoning in this is some salt, black pepper. I'm going to turn that off. And celery salt. Now, if you don't have celery salt, I think you could put anything in here that you want. I think this basic idea of beans and tomatoes and beef lends itself to a whole range of flavor options. And so this is something that you can just play with. Think about the things that you like to put with beef and beans. It is an incredibly adaptable dish. Now the recipe tells me to move the beef to a casserole and layer it with the beans and tomatoes. I gotta tell you, I've already messed up this pan. It's oven safe. I'm not gonna move everything to a casserole and then have to clean something else. I think that we've got some fond going on in the bottom of the pan, and that flavor, it would be a real shame to lose it. So I'm going to layer the beans on top of the beef. And then on top of that, I'm going to pour out the tomatoes. Now, I only need about half of this can of tomatoes, so you will see the other half of this can turn up somewhere soon. Okay, that's about half. Layer it out over top. Okay. A little bit more salt and pepper on top. It says just to put it into the oven and bake for 20 to 30 minutes. Now, it doesn't say whether to cover it or not. I think it needs to be covered, so I will cover it. See you at the tasting.
Hey Glenn, welcome back to your kitchen.
So,
Oh my.
um,
You rolled up the sleeves for this one.
this is, I'm kind of looking forward to this. I think it's a fairly,
Steamy hot.
it is steamy hot.
Look at that. That's got a lot of goodness in
Beef, beans, tomatoes. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will realize, and I didn't realize this until after I cut, for the last half of this recipe, I was wearing my apron inside out.
it. Oops.
So, big laugh. I think it's pretty funny because I didn't notice.
Clearly you don't use the pocket.
I don't use the pocket. And the tomatoes I ended up using this were diced tomatoes with spices because that's what was available at the grocery store. So this is definitely a make-do meal.
Yeah, but it's got all sorts of wholesome goodness flavors in it. I mean, we used to. My mom always would just make beans with some salt and some onion. So tomatoes and meat is like add-on.
So the flavor on this is comforting. It's got that, it's not complicated. It just makes you put a smile on my face, and could eat too much.
And as much as we talked about the idea that we go with bread, I think you could throw it on some potatoes, some mashed potatoes, throw it on some rice, any kind of bread. You got some, what you've got is naan, or what you've got is tortillas. I don't know, just put it together.
Change up the spicing, and you put this with rice and a tortilla and fold it up.
Yeah,
And that would be really
that would change it completely.
Completely.
Yeah.
If you've got, if the spice you have is ras al hanout, put that in, and that would take it in another direction again.
Think it would work with Chinese five spice? Is it Chinese five spice?
It would work with Chinese five spice.
It's a great base. It's got some good food in it. You can add whatever vegetables you want on top of it. Like if you wanted to steam some broccoli and cauliflower and put it with it, I think that would go great. You know me, I'm always saying more vegetables.
More vegetables. Well, this suits the time. April 2020. It's all of those things. It's making do. It's extending your food to get the most value out of it, nutrition-wise and also filling-wise.
And it's pretty darn inexpensive.
It's inexpensive, and every ingredient in here can be swapped for whatever variant of that ingredient you have. You could use any
bean, almost.
Any bean combo, any tough meat. Give this one a try. It's definitely something that you can play with. Thanks for stopping by. Stay safe. See you again soon.